Get a new wife for my son. You're useless. The day our multi-generational house was finally completed. Such heartless words were thrown at me with no remorse by my mother-in-law. I knew she didn't think highly of me. Still, considering her feelings, I agreed to build the multi-generational house. Yet I never imagined being treated with such contempt. With words stuck in my throat, I stared at her with her smug smile. My husband looked pale as a ghost, but she didn't know. She didn't know the impact those words would later have. My name is Elena, 30 years old. After graduating from vocational school, I worked at a production company, drawing illustrations. 2 years ago, I became an independent contractor, and now I work as a freelance designer. There are no benefits like when I was employed, nor are there any set holidays. But my income has increased significantly, and I am able to save more than enough. My husband, Camille, who I married 3 years ago, has been my biggest supporter. He was the one that pushed me when I was contemplating becoming independent. "Elena, I believe you can be successful even on your own," he said. "But if I fail, I'll lose my income, and it will be a burden to you, Camille." "Don't worry about that. We're a team, remember? If you want to try something new, I want to support you." "Camille." "Don't worry. Even if anything happens, you're not alone. I'll support you with all my might." "Thank you. I'll give it a shot." And so, with Camille's support, I became an independent freelancer. At first, jobs were scarce, and my income was close to zero. But with my husband's support, I didn't give up and kept going. Now, 2 years later, I have more work than I can handle, from regular jobs to major projects. Somewhere along the line, my income exceeded both my previous income and my husband's, and now my annual income exceeds $10 million. We started spending more luxurious time together, like going shopping, traveling to match my husband's days off thanks to our comfortable financial situation. Then one day, while working at home, I started feeling a little unwell. When the discomfort didn't subside after a few days, I went to the doctor, and to my surprise, I was pregnant. I went home and nervously awaited my husband's return. In the evening, as usual, he came home and I immediately brought up the topic. "Hey, Camille, you know I haven't been feeling well lately, right? So I went to the hospital today." "Oh, right. I'm sorry I couldn't go with you. Are you okay?" "Yeah, and actually, I'm pregnant." "Huh? You're pregnant?" He stared at me with wide eyes. Surprised, his bag slipped from his hand and asked, "Really?" With a big smile, I nodded. Seeing my response, Camille hugged me tightly. "Thank you. Thank you so much, Elena. I'm so happy." "Whoa, I can't breathe, Camille." "Oh, I'm sorry. I was just so happy." "Seeing you this happy makes me happy too, Camille. Let's work hard together." "Absolutely. I will work even harder, so that you'll be okay even when you're close to giving birth and can't work." "Thank you. I plan to work until the last minute too," I told Camille, my smile emerging naturally as I saw his tearful expression. We began to eat the dinner I had prepared, but my husband could only talk about our future child. "I wonder what the gender will be. We need to prepare various baby items. Should I take paternity leave?" and so on. His excessive enthusiasm made me laugh. He was probably mulling over various aspects in his own way. At that moment, I decided to share something that I'd been contemplating for a while. "Hey, Camille, there's something I've been thinking about for some time. Would it be wrong for us to build our own house?" "Huh? A house? Ours?" "I've always thought that when we have a child, I'd like to live in a standalone house. I want to create a room for our child, and I know it may sound lavish, but I've been thinking that I'd like a study room as well." "That makes sense. Thinking about our future child, our current condominium does feel a bit cramped." "See, now that we know I'm pregnant, I'd really like to do this if we can." "Yeah, I agree. For the sake of our child who's going to be born, let's welcome them in the best environment possible." So, we decided to build a new house. We visited model rooms on our days off and started to plan the floor layout immediately, aiming to complete the house before the birth of our child. When a month had passed since we found out about my pregnancy, we decided to go to my in-laws' house to share the news. My husband's parents were there, with my father-in-law working as a company employee and my mother-in-law being a housewife. They live about a 30-minute drive away from our condominium, but we rarely visit. The reason is simple. I can't say it out loud, but I have a hard time dealing with my mother-in-law. The issue began shortly after our marriage, or it may have started when we first visited his parents' house to announce our engagement. My mother-in-law has never been welcoming towards me, always displaying a sullen expression. We used to visit their house regularly just after our marriage, but she would always ask, "No children yet?" Moreover, she didn't understand my job and often said, "Drawing for a living is not a real job," when my husband and father-in-law were not around. I gradually began to avoid going to their house due to her insensitive comments. Even when my husband suggested visiting them, I would gently decline, saying, "I have a deadline coming up." But this time, I had to go. Plus, I thought that she would be happy if we shared the news of our pregnancy. So we set off for the in-laws' house, my husband at the wheel. After not seeing her for a while, my mother-in-law greeted me with her usual sullen attitude. "Well, well, it's been a long time, hasn't it, Elena?" "Mother-in-law, it's been a while. I wonder what you've been up to. You surely haven't been drawing all this time, right?" "That's what my job is." "Well, still as sassy as ever. And here I thought you might have changed after being away for so long." She spoke to me this way in a hushed tone when we were alone, yet played the part of the good mother-in-law in front of my husband and father-in-law. When my husband announced my pregnancy, she directed a saccharine voice towards me. "Oh my, Elena, congratulations! I'm truly happy to hear I'll be seeing my first grandchild so soon." "Uh-huh, happy. Is the baby a boy or a girl?" "No, it's still too early to tell." "Well, it doesn't really matter, as long as the baby is healthy." "Yeah, you're right." I plastered on a smile, careful not to spoil the mood. After that, we all got caught up in casual chatter, my father-in-law joining in too. Then, amidst the light-hearted banter, my husband dropped a surprising piece of news. "You know, we've decided to build a new house." His announcement got a big reaction from my mother-in-law. "What?" My ominous hunch came true as she responded with delight. "Why not make it a two-family house?" "Two-family house? You mean you guys will live with us?" "Yes. Our house is getting old. We were just debating whether to renovate or move entirely." Well, we didn't really plan to." "I'm sure the child will benefit from living with grandparents, right? You agree too, don't you, Dad?" My father-in-law, thrown into the conversation, kept his expression neutral, but there was a hint of joy as he muttered, "Yeah, I guess so." Seeing his reaction, my mother-in-law turned to me, her eyes practically shouting, "See? Elena? Honey? Dad agrees too, so it's okay, right?" I mean, it's all so sudden." "Why not? It seems more families are going nuclear these days. I'm sure we'll have a blast living together." "Well, I mean, when the baby comes, working will be hard, you know. Wouldn't it be nice to have someone close by to help out with housework?" Well, I had to admit, she had a point. I wanted to keep my job even after the baby was born, and if my mother-in-law was willing to help, that was definitely a good thing. But should we really live together? She seemed genuinely thrilled about the baby. Meanwhile, I found myself caught in a whirlpool of conflicting emotions. From then on, my mother-in-law changed her attitude towards me entirely. Regular texts started arriving on my mobile phone. "How are you feeling? If you need anything, just let me know." And other gentle messages. Maybe the pregnancy made her reconsider her attitude. I began to lower my guard just a little. One day, my husband asked, "What are we doing about the two-family house thing?" With my mother-in-law's increasing kindness, my thoughts began to shift. "Well, since your parents are so insistent, maybe we should give it a shot." "Really? Are you sure? I thought you didn't like my parents." "True, I was a bit wary of your mother and avoided going to your parents' house. But ever since we found out about the baby, she's been really kind. I think I want to give it a shot." "I see. Thank you, Elena. My mom can be a bit self-centered, but I think she's genuinely looking forward to our child." "Yeah, I get it. It really comes across." "Well, we need to revise our plans then. Let's discuss it with the construction company." A few days later, we visited the construction company we had consulted earlier and told them that we wanted to move forward with building a two-family house. Since we had some floor plans in mind, we decided to expand on them. The plans for our new home progressed steadily, with us sometimes even bringing my in-laws along to the construction company. But I was still oblivious, unaware that this decision would lead to such a predicament. A few months later, as I was about to enter my 3rd trimester, we started the construction. When I called my mother-in-law, or MIL, to share the news, she dropped a bombshell. I've waited so long for this moment. I was getting pretty sick of having to be nice to you. What, mother-in-law? Your baby's a girl, isn't it? You're so useless. Didn't I tell you not to have anything but a boy? Wait a minute. When I told you the gender last time, you said, girls' clothes are cute. That's nice, too. That's because your husband and Camille were there. You're not an idiot, are you? Is that so? Her words hit me like a blunt object. I was speechless. She continued mercilessly. Just to let you know, it's too late to regret it now, you know? The house is already under construction. I was just buttering you up to live in the new house. Mother-in-law? Oh, by the way, I've prepared quite a few things, too. Look forward to it, okay? With that, she hung up, leaving me with the dial tone. I had no idea what mother-in-law meant by preparation, but the shock that she hadn't changed a bit was even more significant. I wanted to talk to my husband, but I couldn't muster the courage to say it to his happy face, saying, "It's almost here." I thought I would finish giving birth first, calm down, and discuss it by the time the house was finished. A few months later, our daughter was born safely, and the house was completed about half a year later. We had already told my husband the rough details, and decided to keep the relationship with mother-in-law to a minimum, but let her live in the 2-family house we had built. However, on the handover day, mother-in-law, who was swollen with anticipation, said to me, "Finally, this moment has come. Elena, thank you for your hard work. Now you're on your own. Good luck with your job and childcare." Excuse me, mother-in-law? Not just me, but my husband and father-in-law, who were present, were also at a loss for words. Thinking the house was built so anything would do, mother-in-law continued to utter ruthless words. "I'm sure you know, but I hate a charmless bride like you. If you understand, why don't you just leave with that child?" Wait a minute, what are you saying? "I've found a new bride for my son. Divorce your incompetent husband." A new bride? I've asked everyone I know who has a daughter. I looked for a docile child among them. I think she will be quiet and become a housewife, as I say. At that moment, something inside me crumbled with a crash. A new bride? You've got to be kidding. I was thinking about forgetting everything that had happened so far and allowing her to live with us. Enough. I'm going to kick her out. With a resolute mind, I clearly say to the grinning mother-in-law in front of me, "You're the one that needs to leave, mother-in-law." What? What are you talking about? It's a house built by my son, so there's no need for me to leave. Oh, you're pretty confident, aren't you? Of course. Well, even if you tell me to leave, it's my son's house, so I'll keep living here. Seeing the overly confident mother-in-law, I couldn't help but let out a laugh. Meanwhile, my husband opened his mouth slowly, his face turning pale. "Mom, don't tell me you didn't know." "Huh? What is it, Camille?" "This house, this duplex, was built under Elena's name." What? The smile that mother-in-law had worn so proudly just a moment ago disappeared instantly, replaced by a shocked expression. Visibly upset, she somehow managed to put words together. What are you talking about? She doesn't even have a job. How could she? That's what I've been telling you. Elena is an independent woman. She earns much more than I do. Was that true? Of course it's true. When we decided to build this duplex, we went way over our budget. But Elena covered the excess costs. What? That can't be true. The once smiling mother-in-law quickly turned as pale as a sheet. The final blow was dealt by my father-in-law. He launched a sharp accusation at mother-in-law, who had crumpled on the spot. "What was that comment you made earlier? Don't tell me you've been treating Elena like this behind our backs all along." "And What was that about wanting a new wife? No, that's not it. I was just thinking about what's best for Camille. What's best for Camille? This was all your doing. How could you do this to Elena? I never thought you could be so low. I want a divorce. No, please, father-in-law announced. I'm going to get the divorce papers, and left the room. Left behind, mother-in-law turned to me, her eyes filled with tears. Elena, please! You have to help me. If things continue like this, he's going to divorce me. What do you mean, help? This is all you're doing, isn't it? Don't say that! I admit I was wrong. From now on, I'll accept you as my daughter-in-law, okay? Please! Despite her words, she wasn't sorry in the slightest. Looking at mother-in-law, who cared only about herself, I was utterly disgusted. I stared at her with the iciest stare I could muster, and let loose. Accept me? Accept me as your daughter-in-law? I couldn't care less about your acceptance. We're not a family anymore, remember? You have some nerve to say sorry without meaning a word of it, you scum. You! How could you call me scum? Excuse me? You, who's been hurling insults at me this whole time, are now playing the victim? You ruined the chance I gave you. From now on, I will never forgive you. You're not allowed in this house, and you'll never see our daughter again. If you understand, then get lost right now. You're worthless. Leaving mother-in-law where she stood, my husband and I, still holding our daughter, went inside the house. We locked the door behind us, refusing mother-in-law any access. Ignoring mother-in-law's incessant yelling outside, father-in-law returned with the divorce papers. He made mother-in-law fill them out on the spot and immediately went to file them. It turned out mother-in-law had been borrowing money from father-in-law. She was given the choice to pay back the money immediately or divorce. As a housewife with no means to pay back the money in a few days, mother-in-law reluctantly chose divorce. We let father-in-law into the house and locked the door once again. After a while, mother-in-law continued to cause a ruckus in front of our house, but before we knew it, she was gone. A bit later, it seemed that mother-in-law's sister reached out to father-in-law, saying that mother-in-law had come to her. Apparently, mother-in-law had been terrible to her sister in the past, to the point that they were almost estranged. Now, in exchange for letting mother-in-law live with her, her sister is making mother-in-law do all the housework as a sort of revenge for past grievances. I'm certain she's not living the easy life she once had. On the other hand, my family of 4 is living happily. Father-in-law, who is a man of few words, shows a lot of love to our daughter. His mere presence provides an ample amount of love for her. Looking forward, we plan to keep working together with my husband and father-in-law to create a fun and loving home.